Happy Monday, Zoology. Today we're going to be talking about different classes of Annelida. So there are four main classes we're going to talk about. Class Polychaeta, Class Oligochaeta, Class Hirudinea, and Class, the last class is Echiura. So we're going to run through them all. Your book doesn't go into a great detail on some of these, but I just wanted to give you guys, this is the notes I would have given you in class, so just give you an opportunity to see all the different classes. So, class Polychaeta means many setae, those little hair-like extensions. They're also called sand or bristleworm. They're the largest, most diverse annelid group, and they're also the most primitive, and we think those two are tied together. Because they were around for so long, they're able to diversify into so many more groups. All of them are aquatic. Most of them live in marine environments, but a few of them are freshwater. This picture on the right is a brightly colored specimen. General characteristics. They're 2 inches to 10 feet long. They're often very brightly colored, like you can see on the right here. They live in crevices. Sometimes they live in old shells left over from bivalvia. Or they live in burrows. Body plan for these guys. They have a distinct head, the big part of this one on the right, with a mouth and sense organs. They have repeating parapodia, which they can use for crawling or digging if they live on the bottom, swimming if they live in the actual ocean part. They can use them for gills. They can use these parapodia for anchors, and some of them use them to create currents to bring food and other nutrients to them, like sponges. Feeding and digestion for these guys. Most active are predators. So in the example on the right, this is a sandworm right there. They live in mucus tubes, but they can also swim. Mostly they come out at night when it's cooler. They'll crawl onto the sand to hunt their prey. This one is a sandworm from Oregon. 2, they can filter feed. Many burrow or live in tubes, and some have long feathery tentacles to catch their food. The cilion tentacles move the food to their mouth, exactly like the tentacles on a jellyfish, or the arms of an octopus move their foods to its mouth. On the bottom here I have some tube worms, and then up at the top right there, that brightly colored pink and green guy, that's a feather duster worm. Both of these are filter feeders. Respiration for Polychaeta. They usually breathe through their parapodia, those little leg-like extensions on the side of their body. Some of them have gills on their segments, and some just can exchange across their body surface, so straight across. Excretion in these guys. They have 1 pair of nephridia for each segment. This is really useful because each individual segment has the ability to expel waste. They absorb the useful materials and expel the waste of the segment, usually taking it straight out of their coelom. The senses for Polychaeta. They have simple eye spots, which you can see up towards the top left and right on this guy here, and also on the back of those little black dots. They have a nuchal organ, which is for chemoreception. Those little tentacles around the mouth are his nuchal organ. And then they also have statocysts for balance, so they can see exactly where they are in the water and know which way their body's pointing. Reproduction in Polychaeta. They have a simple reproductive system. They don't have permanent gonads, which is really interesting. Their gonads appear temporarily during certain seasons when they mate, and then after they mate, they shed their gonads to conserve energy, so they're not able to reproduce all year round. So, our next class, Oligochaeta. These are few setae. These are your earthworms and other similar species. There's over 3,000 species. They have no distinct head, no parapodia, and very few setae. They're often present in high density, meaning there's 1 ton of earthworms in 1 acre of land that has earthworms in it. That's a lot of earthworms. That's 2,000 pounds of earthworms in 1 acre. Some general characteristics for oligochaetes. They're a very important group. Aristotle referred to them as the intestines of the earth. Most species are only a few inches long. There's 2 species that are very large. The giant Gippsland earthworm in Australia, which is pictured to the right here, and then recently discovered is the giant Palouse earthworm in Idaho, found in the Palouse region. Where do they live? They're mostly terrestrial. They're burrowing in the soil. There are some common freshwater species, and then one species actually is able to live on glaciers. They're called ice worms. They eat the pollen and algae. They're very seasonal as these pollen and floats from other areas, but they're kind of interesting because we find them right on glaciers, and they die right around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It's too hot for them. Body wall in oligochaetes. They have a protective cuticle that's secreted by their epidermis. The pores in the dermis keep the skin moist. This keeps them able to breathe. They have to be able to be moist to be able to breathe. Some of them will allow their coelomic fluid to leak out, their excess fluid. And then also some have numerous mucus glands. These are just to keep them moist, to keep them lubricated, moving through the soil, being able to breathe, not having dirt stick to you. When you live in dirt, not having dirt stick to you is a really good adaptation. Feeding and digestion in oligochaetes. Most are scavengers or detritus feeders. Remember, detritus is that organic waste. They feed on decaying organic matter in the soil. They have a powerful pharynx to suck in food. They suck in a whole bunch of dirt and food, and then their body, their digestive system, filters out the good stuff. These guys have calciferous glands, which secrete excess calcium into the digestive system, where it can then get released to the environment. The soil has a lot of extra calcium in it from rainwater and stuff leaching calcium down into it. So these guys, to be able to get rid of that excess calcium, is a really useful adaptation. Respiration in oligochaetes. They have no respiratory organs. They don't use their parapodia. They exclusively breathe through their skin. They don't have lungs or gills. So you can see by this GIF on the right here, I breathe through my skin as long as it stays wet. These guys need moisture and able to breathe. But also at the same point, if they get stuck underwater, they will drown because they need to have air available for their skin to reach as well. Excretion in oligochaetes. They have paired nephridia, these early proto-kidneys in each body segment. They ooze extra water out of their skin to help them osmoregulate, take care of their water levels. And this helps lubricate their skin once again, so they can move through the skin, through the dirt, so that they can breathe through their skin. This is very important function. Reproduction in these guys. They're hermaphrodites. They cross-fertilize each other. So they will both exchange sperm, and then each worm secretes nourishment for their eggs and makes a cocoon for their young. Class Hirudinea. These are your leeches. There's 500 species. They're mainly freshwater, 2 to 6 centimeters large. A couple grow to 20 centimeters large. Many are carnivores, eating invertebrates, but some are parasites. The ones that we are most worried about are parasites. They have a flattened body. They have interior and posterior suckers. They have a fixed number of segments. And their coelom functions as a large chamber. There's no separations. And it's pretty densely filled with connective tissue and muscles. Movement in Hirudinea. They have no parapodia, no setae. They have a poor hydrostatic skeleton, as you can see on this guy on the right. He's not round like a lot of the other ones we've seen. He's kind of flattened. They can use their muscles to create swimming movements, and they can also move like inchworms with suckers. So the front sucker will grab onto something, and then the back one will move up to it, grab on, and then the front one will reach out, kind of inching along like an inchworm. Feeding and digestion. Some of them are predators. They feed on snails, worms, and insect larvae. They have an extendable proboscis with 3 jaws. And then on the right, I have a picture of a parasite, which attached to their host with a sucker. They pierce the skin with teeth in the proboscis, and they secrete a local anesthetic. This is something, a local anesthetic reduces the feeling of your nerves in an area, so a lot of times you won't feel a leech sink their teeth into you because they're releasing this anesthetic. They then can release blood thinners so that they can fill up with your blood more easily, get it to flow through the wound better. One thing that these guys don't have very good of is digestion. All of these guys have poor digestion. They rely on bacteria to help them digest their food. But with this, because they're cold-blooded, they can live for 1 year on a single meal. They don't have to eat very often. Respiration in Hirudinea. Most gas exchange happens across the skin, although some aquatic species, such as this one on the right, have gills. Like any other annelid, their skin has to be moist for them to breathe. Circulation. Most do not have blood vessels. Instead, They have the coelom is just filled with a whole bunch of fluid, and that fluid is what passes things around. This is why they're able to live for so long. Most of them is just a coelom, so they can store blood in their entire body cavity. They have an open circulatory system, no clear, not a lot of blood vessels. Nervous system in these guys, they have two brains, one in the front and one in the posterior part. Each brain controls a sucker. In bloodsuckers, they have really well-defined chemoreceptors. They're much larger. This allows them to find prey that has blood in it. Reproduction in Hirudinea. They're hermaphrodites. They cross-fertilize like earthworms, both exchanging sperm. They produce the same cocoon, and then the young emerge from the cocoon. On the right here, you have pictures of both a young that's out of the cocoon and two young who are currently in the cocoon. All right, and that leads us on to our last class, class Echiura, the spoonworms. There's 140 species. They're all sausage-shaped, and they all live in the marine environments. They can burrow into sand. They can live in rock and coral crevices, and then most of them are deposit feeders. They can grow from 1 centimeter to up to 50 centimeters large, so slightly large but not huge. Body form of these guys, they're cylindrical and they're sausage-shaped. They have a long retractable proboscis. This has a ciliated groove and it resembles a spoon. On the right here, you can see on my example towards the right-hand side there, he's got that very spoon-shaped proboscis. This proboscis is very mobile. It can extend up to 10 times its size. They don't have any tentacles. They use this proboscis to kind of filter sand and move it around and try to find food in it. Their trunk, their back part of the body, has hooked setae used for burrowing, for attachment, etc. Feeding and digestion of these guys. Most are deposit feeders, collecting small pieces of detritus. Their digestive system is long and coiled. This is his mouth that you're seeing at the top half of this spoonworm here. All of that is that proboscis that can extend up to 10 times its regular size. That would retract all the way back into his mouth. Circulation, excretion, and nervous system in these guys. They have a simple closed respiratory system. They excrete nitrogenous waste through nephridia. They have a circular nerve ring in the head and a ventral nerve cord that runs down the entire back of their body. Reproduction in these guys. They're dioecious. They exhibit sexual dimorphism, with the males being much smaller. They have external fertilization and they form that trochophore larvae. Some males are parasitic, meaning that they live on or in the female. In this example on the right here, this is a green spoonworm. The first larvae to hit the ground turn into females, and then ones that land on top of the females turn into males. So it's one of those interesting examples of sexual determination. But hope you guys are having a wonderful day. My next video will be on arthropods, and we'll start the exciting world of jointed legs.